friends, dear followers. In this video, I'm going to show you a gambit with the black pieces that is absolutely spectacular. You're going to love it because of how easy it is to play, how easy it is to memorize the plans, and how often you can play it. Why? Because look at when you can play this gambit. When they play e4, you play e5, and they play knight f3. Simply, if they play this, you can already play this amazing gambit, which is one of the best I've seen in my life, and I really mean it. I'm going to explain it in great detail so that you leave this video knowing how to play it perfectly. And not only that, but you'll be eager to try it because it's spectacular. So if you want to give me a like for sharing these kinds of videos, I'd be absolutely delighted. All right, chess teacher, what's the gambit? Well, the gambit will be after playing this move right here, d5, a very peculiar move because now we're giving away a pawn in a very, very strange way. Well, what we're doing here is throwing our opponent off their game, or rather, off their squares. Our opponent, by playing knight f3 after the double king's pawn, is expecting us to play knight c6 to play the Italian, Spanish, or any normal opening. They might even be prepared for the Russian defense or the Petrov defense against d6, but I'm sure they haven't prepared for this gambit. So we already have a very positive aspect, which is that we're gonna rattle our opponent. They're not prepared for that. So the opponent has two fairly logical options, and we're gonna calculate and explain how to play well against both. What are the two main ones? Capturing this pawn, which is totally free, right? You see it, right? We're playing a double king's pawn. They attack the pawn and we don't defend it. That's why this move would be logical, although we could later recapture here, right? Well, that's one, and the other would be to capture this pawn here, which is also very common, right? They don't take this pawn I've offered because maybe they're afraid, they think it's a trap or something, and they take this other one. Notice that if they don't do either, we would capture and we'd be putting on a lot of pressure and winning a pawn to boot. That's why these are the two main variations. Come on, let's start, for example, with pawn takes pawn, because I love its response, okay? You'll have to pay close attention, however. There's no need to memorize the moves because you just need to memorize the plan. We don't want to recapture this pawn with the queen because if we do, we wouldn't be playing in gambit style anymore, and look what would happen. They'd attack the queen, and when we move it, they could simply continue developing their pieces. They've developed three pieces while we've developed none, and the advantage would be huge for the white pieces. That's why we want to play in gambit style and not recapture this pawn now. Instead, we'll take advantage of the fact that this pawn has moved from here to advance this pawn. Look, it's super important when they capture this pawn here from the gambit to advance this pawn to attack this knight. And what is our plan when we advance this pawn? Well, to launch an attack on the knight on f3 so that it moves toward the queen side. And this is very simple, look. Let's calculate all the options so that nothing escapes us. Retreating the knight backward would be very sad. We could capture here and our advantage would be too overwhelming. This knight wouldn't be able to get out, okay? Too much of an advantage for us. So moving backward, I don't even consider it an option. Coming here or here would lose the knight directly, since we control these squares with the queen. So the two good squares, right, would be to move the knight forward to e5 or to d4. Against both, we're going to react the same way, okay? But it's a little better to place it on d4, since here it's a bit easier to threaten. For example, with the bishop, with the pawn, right? With the queen capturing here. Normally, they'll place it on d4. As I said, it doesn't matter to us because against both, we'll react the same way, which is by capturing this pawn here. Very well, notice that up to here, everything has been forced, right? In the variation of exchanging the pawn, everything was forced. We advance the pawn, the knight came here, and we take with the queen. This knight has to move. It can't go forward because we have all the squares covered, nor to this side. It has to go to the queen side. Very well, how are we going to continue? Well, now we're where we wanted to be, right? And remember this, what we want is to wait for our opponent to castle. Yes, you have to keep in mind that we have to wait for our opponent to castle. So how are we going to wait? By developing our knights. Look how simple. You don't have to memorize the moves, you just have to memorize the plan. We want them to castle, we develop our knights. For example, here they could play bishop e2, right? To develop. Yes, perfect. So what would we do? Well, we would continue developing our knights. But it's true that here they have much better moves than bishop e2, such as knight c3. So let's calculate it. Well, it's the only move in the position that puts us in a bind since it develops the knight and at the same time attacks our queen, a queen that we have in the middle of the board and that can be a fairly easy target for attack. Where does this queen have to go? Well, it's very important to remember where that queen has to go. We'll always place it behind the pawn. Why? Because it'll be the square where, one, it'll be safe, and two, it'll be controlling the whole board, and especially toward the castled king, which is where we want to launch the attack. Don't worry, if they don't castle, it'll be a very pleasant game for us, but everyone castles, okay? So we're going to launch that attack against the castled king. That's what the plan's about. Very well, here they must continue developing their pieces, and notice they don't have much of an option. Up to here, everything has been very simple, but it's going to continue to be so. Why? Because, for example, they must develop this bishop. If they want to develop this one, they're in trouble, look. At d3, we'd just capture with a discovered check, they'd have to block, we'd take with the bishop, the knight, or the queen, and they'd lose material. So trying to develop this bishop with d3 would be a very bad move. Since they can move this bishop, everyone is going to develop this bishop. It doesn't matter where they develop it, whether here, here, or here. The most logical and protected move would be bishop e2, okay? Because there, they don't threaten anything at all. And then we have to think, have they castled? No? So we're going to continue developing our knights. Look at how simple this plan's. You can watch the video as many times as needed to fully understand the plan. But don't worry, it's very simple, and you'll all be able to play it perfectly after watching this video, and you'll win many games. Alright, now it seems practically certain that they're gonna castle. If not, we just keep developing our pieces as usual. But notice they've already taken a long time. Finally, they can castle. What should we do when they cancel? Well, our move is going to be bishop d6. Look at what a beautiful move, a bishop development move. While it sets up a battery with the queen, notice this is called a queen and bishop battery toward the opponent's castle, toward the weakest point of the position. We are threatening checkmate. Obviously, if someone's distracted and makes a strange move, we just deliver checkmate, right? But obviously, almost everyone notices this checkmate and they try to stop it. How could this checkmate be stopped? Well, moving the king wouldn't work because it's still mate, moving the rook would be another mistake because it's just check, and no matter how they escape, we'd deliver mate here. So we conclude that the white pieces, once they've castled and we set up our attack in this gambit, have only one single option to stop the checkmate, and that's to stop it with the pawn. Okay? Many of you will say, here, taking advantage of the weakened white squares, let's move in with the bishop, take advantage, and even attack the rook. That would be a very good idea. However, there's a much better idea, okay? In most openings, this plan you've made would be very good, right? You weaken white squares and take advantage with the other bishop. Very good plan. However, there's a definitive plan to win much faster. Notice the plan is to break through with h5. Very good. We have a very simple plan. If it were our turn again, we just play h5, and this would be more than one for us. Why? Because if they don't take, we will. Either way, we'd open the file for the rook and look at how our pieces connect. Queen, bishop, and rook on the same point. Checkmate would be imminent, which is why after the move h5, our opponent has no choice but to react to avoid this move. How can they avoid it? Well, I've been looking, and the only way to avoid it is h4. Logically, it's the only way to stop us from advancing. All right, then, we're sticking with our plan. Now, what is the plan? We can't get in. This is looking bad, right? For the white pieces, but we have to learn how to win. We're already winning here. You should know how. Our plan now is, notice we can't push with this queen and bishop battery anymore. So it's time to change the queen's diagonal. We want to enter through the white squares. You can enter either through here or through here. Notice it doesn't matter. The moves aren't important. You must memorize the plan. Once we try to enter here, look, very simple. Very, very simple. White has castled. So you remember well. They've castled. Great. Once they castle, we threaten mate. They have to stop it with this move, so we undermine with h5. We're threatening h4, winning the game, so they have to stop it with h4. Then we change the queen's diagonal. It doesn't matter if it's here or here, because we want to enter through this square right here. Very important. How can the white pieces stop this entry? Well, there's no way, because notice, if they bring the king to defend it, we just enter anyway, because the queen is defended by our bishop, which hasn't even moved yet, okay? Notice that if they don't castle, you can always waste time at the start, quote unquote, developing this bishop here and here, okay? It's absolutely fine, right? So here, whatever they do, notice you must know the correct order of how to win the game, right? Whatever they do. I mean, for example, if they try to escape with the rook, if they do something else, it's exactly the same. Remember the plan. The correct move and the correct order is to first destroy and undermine this pawn structure with our bishop. It's true that we sacrifice the bishop, we simply have a massive attack. Why do we sacrifice it? Because notice that now we enter with the queen where we wanted to. Queen h3 wins the game. Why? Because there's no way to manage to stop this attack. Many of you would tell me, what are you threatening here, chess teacher? The main threat is queen takes check, and when he moves, well, we'd give mate with the bishop. Right? Notice that now the threat of queen takes pawn is super strong. How can this pawn be defended? It seems like all this is very long, but it's very simple, because notice I'm explaining all the options and why we do each thing, so in your games you can do it. How do they defend this pawn? The only way to defend it and not end in checkmate is to come here with the king. However, we don't care because we're going to give checkmate in the same way. Notice, how should we continue? First, we enter with check. The king can't keep defending the pawn and has to leave. If he goes backwards, we're going to end up giving mate. Well, at first, we could already give it, even with the bishop on h3. So they have to go forward no matter what. And here they stop defending the pawn. How do we continue? Queen takes. This is going to end in checkmate. You don't need to memorize how to give checkmate, but notice it's very simple to see that this king in the center of the board will end up being killed by our pieces. If you want, I'll show you an example of how to give checkmate in case you don't know how, but it's very simple. For example, check, they have to block with the bishop, we move in with the knight, taking advantage of the fact that this bishop is pinned and cannot capture. The king, for instance, can try to escape, or he can capture this pawn. Notice there are many ways, right? But anyway, it doesn't matter. You simply coordinate your pieces to deliver checkmate. You give check with the queen, and the king has to move. Now you give check with the knight. In this case, we'd even be winning the queen. Check, we win the queen. Notice there are multiple ways to win the game. The king can move. Even look, I give you check here. You must capture with the knight because the queen is there and you can't with the king. Now I give you check with the bishop, and I'll give you checkmate on the next move. At most, you can block with the bishop, giving it away. I take it with the queen, and when you move, I simply give you checkmate right here. So if you've learned the plan well, okay, you'll be able to win many games when they play pawn takes pawn. Now, logically, we come to the most important part of the video. What happens if, when we play this gambit, which I think is called the elephant gambit, but I'm not 100% sure, instead of capturing pawn takes pawn, where we saw that very simple plan of going for the castled king, as I said, you can watch it as many times as needed, you can save the video to watch later, it'll always be available for free for you. What happens if they capture this pawn right here? A very, very, very logical move that people play against me all the time. Why? Because we're giving away a pawn, right? Very well. Now, chess teacher, should we capture this pawn here with the black pieces? No, okay. We are not going to capture here. Remember, well, if they capture here, what should you do? Advance and then capture with the queen. You remember, right? If they capture here, our plan changes just a little bit. We're going to play bishop to d6. This move is very, very good. Notice that our plan is similar. We're developing the bishop in the same spot as before. We attack this bishop, and we attack a possible future castling by the white pieces. Very well. If this knight moves away, they're lost. We're attacking a knight. Now, the first little trap, if the knight moves, we simply capture here, win back the pawn, and our advantage is just too strong. Our plan, what would it be? Well, very similar to the previous one, even easier to play because when the knight moves and they castle, we could even enter directly with the queen. But anyway, what happens? No one captures here. So let's put this back the way it was, right? This is here, they capture us here, we play here. Very well. No one moves the knight. Instead, everyone defends this knight with d4. It's the only good move for the white pieces, okay? Remember, if they move the knight, we win with pawn takes pawn. If they defend the knight, which is the right move, let's see how to keep playing because it's very simple. They defend the knight. Now it's trying to capture this pawn. Why? To prevent this knight from returning to these two squares. Very, very good. Now, how can the white pieces continue? If they make a useless move like bishop to c4 or any other useless move, okay? Bishop to e2, whatever, what are we going to do? Well, our plan is quite simple. We trade this knight, trade queens, and this position favors black. Why? Because we've secured the castling. Got it? Very simple. But, well, logically, there are better moves here for the white pieces. But anyway, I just wanted to mention it in case it crossed anyone's mind, right? Alright, here, in this position right here, once we've captured this pawn so no one gets lost, what happens if instead of making a stupid move, they play well and play, for example, knight to c6 attacking our pawn? Against knight to c3, they'll always play this, right? Why? Because we have a loose pawn here that's very annoying. So with knight to c3, which develops a piece and also attacks our weak point, so how should we continue it? Because this is very, very simple. Well, when they play like that, all we have to do is knight to f6, defending this pawn. It's true that now the white pieces seem to have a very, very simple game. Look at this, okay? I attack this pawn, you defend it, so then I pin this knight and threaten knight takes pawn. This knight isn't defending this pawn now because it's pinned. This game seems very simple for white, and I assure you this happens in most games, because these are all forced moves. That's why this gambit is so good. So when they threaten this capture, we're going to ignore them. We castle. Look, okay, we cancel. And you'll ask me, chess teacher, what's your plan for when they play knight takes e4? Since it's a logical move, and that's why they're putting on this pressure. Well, look, friends, they're already totally lost here. Our maneuver will be the following. Isn't it true the queen is pinned, and that's why this knight can't be captured? If this queen weren't here, let me explain so you understand. If this queen weren't here, we'd simply capture this knight now and win a piece. How can we do it? Without wasting time so that this queen isn't here. Very simple. We're going to capture this knight first. You see it, right? Now, they couldn't capture here because we'd simply capture with this bishop and win the piece. We've captured 1 and 2, and they've only captured 1. That's why they must recapture this bishop with the pawn. And now we simply capture queens, and what's happening here? The pin is gone. When they retake this queen, we capture this knight, and on top of that, we're up a piece. Look at what a great position this is. 2 pieces for the opponent, 1, 2, and 3 for us. So if they capture this pawn with the knight, as we saw a moment ago, they'll end up losing a piece. I almost forgot the most important variation you should know if you want to play this gambit. Why? Because when they play knight to f3 and you play d5, the gambit we're talking about in the whole video, in case anyone's missing, is that when they capture this pawn and we advance our other pawn to attack this knight, instead of moving the knight, which we saw was wrong because we made the first attack of the video, they play queen to e2, a very strong move, since they don't let us capture this pawn because of the queen pin. How should we react to this? It's very simple, but you need to know it, because if you don't, you're going to end up suffering a lot. And it's silly because I'm going to explain it now and then you won't have any problems. Well, simply, the only thing you have to do is give away this pawn that they're attacking. They're attacking it with the queen, so we're going to play bishop e7. Yes, we give it away, but what we don't want is for them to give us a check. So we put the bishop in front, and when they capture, they haven't given us a check. We continue developing. In what way? Well, we develop the knight first. We're threatening the queen, which has to move. Notice that it doesn't have very good moves to go to, because if it comes here or here, it blocks the bishop. So what many people do, logically, is come to give this check here and notice that here the move's not going to be bishop d7. I'm sure you're all thinking of this one to keep moving the queen. However, this isn't very good either because they play queen b3 and attack this point. Right? We don't want that. What do we want to play? Well, our plan is very simple. Remember it well, c6. To stop the check, and no matter how much they capture us, okay, we're going to capture with the knight. Yes, we're down 2 pawns. Yes, they can keep pressing us. But notice that our position is very, very good for us to press the opponent. And you'll see it next. How can we continue after this move? Well, we're going to castle. Even though this move now threatens to win another pawn, okay, we're down 2 pawns, and they threaten to win a third with bishop takes knight. Pawn takes bishop, queen takes pawn. Down 3 pawns, and it seems we have no compensation. However, this position is practically winning already for the black pieces. Our piece activity is so superior that we have a huge advantage. The two bishops have all the squares on the board free. Our opponent has a bishop that can't move, okay? And notice something important. They're threatening the rook, and we're going to place it here. A rook that in the middle of the opening already has life. A rook that right now you're going to see is going to be the protagonist when they play queen e2. Right? You'll see, what can the white pieces do here? They can do anything. For example, knight c3. We don't care because what we're going to do is this spectacular move. Rook b4. A move that I'm sure hasn't occurred to anyone. And it's a move that cuts across this board and prevents the queen from returning home. Because notice that it can't pass from here. You see it, right? We have the rook controlling it. This rook is also defended. Very well. Here, if they keep playing like threatening our rook, like castling, we don't care because we're going to threaten the queen. So if they threaten your rook, same thing. We threaten the queen, which has much more value. And this queen, as you can see, is totally trapped. It can't go anywhere. Why? Because of this knight that has been placed on c3. If they've placed the knight on c3, this queen is trapped. But many of you will say, look, chess teacher, yes, but what if they don't play knight c3? Of course, if instead of playing knight c3 in this position, they play any other move like castling, then this no longer works because the queen can always return to this square, and all the attack we have is no longer useful. All right, so I recommend this killer move, rook to b6. Notice that you shouldn't just memorize moves, but the plan. The plan is that even if we're down pawns, we have spectacular initiative with the queen in the center of the board. We threaten her with the rook. This queen, yes. Now, she has a square to go to, that's fine, but it's not the main goal. While we can keep improving our pieces as we attack her, the queen has squares for now. However, notice that now we can bring the knight into the attack. I love this, bringing the knight into the attack. It seems like we're not threatening anything at all, but we're threatening to win the game very easily. Whatever they do, we're going to capture this pawn right here. Notice that if this pawn advances, it's even worse because we jump in with the knight to give check, right? So whatever they do, we capture this pawn, sacrificing another piece. Notice that right now, if we play this, we don't care about material. We want to win and deliver mate. They capture here, and we could even win the queen with this discovered attack. Notice the queen in the center will end up lost no matter what. But not only that, we've won the game because when they retreat, we could simply not take the queen and let them escape or capture with a move like bishop to b7, and even if they take our queen, we don't even have to take back since bishop takes knight would be checkmate. Notice that this king can't escape in any way. I hope you loved this video. Give me a like if you enjoyed it. If you want to buy a board as beautiful as this one and have it arrive in just one day, check the description, use the code CHESSTEACHER, and you'll get a small discount. And as I said, I'll see you tomorrow in the next video, friends.